What's going on, everybody? It is Monday, October 3rd, and this is the College Football Daily. I'm your host, Nick Kosko, once again. Another recap episode for you as Oklahoma State got a big statement win on Saturday over Baylor, as the top 10 Cowboys now thinking about maybe the college football playoff and as well as winning the Big 12 here in 2022. So to help me break it all down is going to be Cody Nagel of GoPokes.com, our 24/7 site for Oklahoma State coverage. Cody, let's bring you in now, man. I appreciate you joining me here this week. It's amazing, though. Oklahoma State, probably the quietest top 10 team we have out there in college football, but a solid win over Baylor in that Big 12 championship rematch. What were your biggest takeaways from this one?
Yeah, I think we kind of learned that Oklahoma State is legit this year again. There was kind of a lot of doubters going into the matchup against Baylor. Oklahoma State's non-conference schedule was pretty weak. They played Central Michigan, Arizona State, and an FCS program, so they really hadn't been tested a whole lot. So to go on the road, get revenge against Baylor for that Big 12 title game loss last year, I think it says a lot about this team this year that Mike Gundy has.
So I wanted to talk about what this team is this year. Now, again, only 4 games in, so it's a smaller sample size. But again, this team was highly respected coming in. Now they've worked their way into firmly into the top 10 of all of these polls. And with a win like that over the defending Big 12 champs, and it was basically this conference was down between maybe Oklahoma State and Baylor. Obviously, Oklahoma, the Sooners, they look pretty shaky over the weekend as well again. So I mean, was this expected of Oklahoma State coming into 2022, or is it going to be one of those things where, you know what, it's probably going to be Oklahoma, it's probably going to be Baylor again, and Oklahoma State's probably going to be in the mix?
Yeah, I think with how much Oklahoma State lost on defense, I think there was a lot of questions on that side. Jim Knowles obviously goes to Ohio State. They lose a lot of guys in the back end. You think of Malcolm Rodriguez at linebacker, all the defensive backs that they lost last year. I mean, even Tanner McAllister following Jim Knowles to Ohio State. I think they were definitely going to be in the mix this year still, just because of you bring Spencer Sanders back at quarterback, all the weapons that he's got on offense, just the experience that he brings. But again, we weren't sure if this was a legit Oklahoma State team because they really hadn't played anybody up until that Baylor game.
So speaking of Spencer Sanders, he's one of the veterans across college football, obviously within the Big 12 as well, one of the better quarterbacks, of course. What were your takeaways from him in this game? Obviously, it wasn't the biggest game on the stat sheet for him, but he's been one of those, let's call him de facto leaders for this Oklahoma State football team, and he has been for years. It just seems like even if he doesn't play up to speed where he's maybe throwing for 400 yards and maybe 3 or 4 touchdowns in a game, he still finds a way to get it done and just maybe gives his team a bit of a spark, don't you think?
Yeah, I think he did a good job of just managing the game yesterday and taking what the defense gave him. Obviously, Baylor's got a good defense under Dave Aranda, but he didn't force a whole lot. There was one, he had the one interception, but it really wasn't a bad throw. It was more of a great play by the defensive back for Baylor. So, and going into this matchup in his previous 4 games against Baylor, he had 11 turnovers. So, I'm sure that was in his head. It was obviously in the head of all the Oklahoma State fans going into the matchup. If he threw an interception early, would it snowball into a downhill effect again, just like it did in the Big 12 title game? But he did a good job of just kind of taking what the defense gave him, and again, the big X factor with him is his legs, and his ability to just extend plays and break out of the pocket when things kind of collapse there, and pick up a first down here or there. Yeah, I think this was probably one of his more underrated performances, that he's had in his career, even though the stats weren't, all that impressive.
So looking at the Big 12 as a whole now coming after the weekend, of course, we mentioned Oklahoma kind of took a bit of a dip as well. Oklahoma State stays within the top 10 of the respective polls. Kansas looks like a legit football team all of a sudden at 5-0 this year. So when you look at the landscape of the Big 12, knowing that the Cowboys just beat the defending champion Baylor Bears, I got to imagine Oklahoma State is now the Big 12 favorite moving forward with the remaining 8 games on their schedule.
Yeah, I think they're the favorite right now, but the way things have gone these first 2 weeks in conference play, I don't think we can really rule anybody out at this point. Oklahoma's still got a lot of talent on their roster, and they've got decent coaches. So, I mean, they could easily turn it around and, run the table and get back into the mix too. Texas, when they get Quinn Ewers back, I mean, they're probably going to be one of the better teams again. Like you mentioned, Kansas. I mean, who knows if they'll ever lose at this point? And you think of TCU even too, upsetting Oklahoma the other day. They look legit as well. It's just from top to bottom, it's probably the best conference. When you think of from the first team to the last team, one of the better ones in the country.
I'd be remiss, of course, if I didn't mention Texas. And of course, as you just said, when they do get Quinn Ewers back, inevitably they are going to be a better team, and they just beat West Virginia over the weekend. So I'm looking at just kind of keep it within the Big 12 right here before we talk about bigger picture stuff. I'm looking at this Big 12 conference. Again, we just mentioned Oklahoma State is probably the favorite, but the other teams, Kansas, TCU, Texas, all like legit threats to them as well. Baylor still in the mix, even though they just lost to Oklahoma State. And of course, you never know with Oklahoma as well, with all that talent they have on the roster. So as a member of the media who does cover the Big 12, and obviously in particular Oklahoma State with GoPokes.com, but the Big 12, very interesting this year. And I feel like it's a conference that many did not expect to maybe be this competitive or maybe even this good, if we want to call it this good right now. All the attention, of course, on the SEC, on the Big 10, maybe now some attention going over to the Pac-12 based on USC's performance this year as well. So I mean, what's your take on the Big 12 conference through the first couple of games in conference play, and I guess kind of just overall through this 2022 season so far?
Yeah, some of the big surprises, obviously Kansas. I wasn't too high on Texas Tech or even TCU in their first year with new head coaches. Really wasn't sure how they would do. Both those teams look pretty decent, even though Tech lost this weekend at K State. But I kind of worried that as far as their playoff hopes or anything like that, that they might beat themselves up. And, the conference champion might have 2, 3 losses and they're not going to have a shot at getting into the 14 playoff. So, it'll be interesting to see if, Oklahoma State or a TCU or somebody can, continue to win and, not get upset or anything like that and get to the conference title game with one loss and, still have a shot at getting into the playoff.
So we'll step aside and take a quick break. On the other side, we'll talk about the college football playoff and what it means for Oklahoma State and vice versa. Of course, keep it locked here. This is the College Football Daily right here on 24/7 Sports. So let's circle back to that college football playoff conversation right there. Again, Oklahoma State undefeated top 10 team. And you mentioned it before how the Big 12 kind of usually beats itself up and kind of plays itself out of the playoff picture again with only the 4 teams at the moment. No 2-loss team has ever made the playoff. I'm not picking 2 losses for Oklahoma State quite yet on their schedule, but it just seems like, as you mentioned, they probably do have to go maybe 13-0, 12-1 to get into the playoff. 11-2, probably not going to get it done, particularly with the Big 12 with the way it is right now. It seems like everybody's beating each other up right now except Oklahoma State and Kansas, as we mentioned before. So, I mean, what is the expectation now for Oklahoma State when it comes to the postseason later this year?
Yeah, I think right now, obviously, expectations are, get back to the Big 12 title game, and, finish this time, get that win. And, I think last year, if they do get that touchdown late and, they don't get stopped at the, 1-inch line or whatever it was, I think they probably get into the playoff and maybe they pass up Cincinnati. So, if they can get back there and win that game, I think they'll probably have an outside shot, just depending on how, other conferences shake out and everything. But, just kind of looking ahead to their schedule, they've got, they got to play at OU. So obviously big Bedlam rivalry game there. And then they've got to go to Kansas and to Kansas State too, back-to-back weeks. So, both those programs look pretty good this season too. So, there's the schedule's only going to get harder from this point. I mean, obviously going down to Waco and beating Baylor was a good win, but like Mike Gundy said in the post game, every week is going to be like this. They're going to be, hard-nosed games that you can get out to a big lead, but it's not going to be over. You got to finish games, so it'll be a grind here, and especially because Oklahoma State had their bye week right after the non-conference schedule, so they've got 9 straight weeks now of Big 12 games without a break. So yeah, it'll be a grind for sure.
Well, you mentioned the road games coming up, particularly against Kansas and Kansas State, which are obviously big games this year based on the quality of those football teams. And, of course, going at the rival Oklahoma. It just seems like now the strength of schedule argument is going to be in their favor, even should they drop one of those games. I feel like at this point, maybe if they do get into the Big 12 title game at, let's just say, 11-1, and they do win the Big 12 title, they're going to have a realistic shot at the playoff, no?
Yeah, I think if they win the conference and they've got 1 loss, I don't see how they're keeping them out. Again, it just depends on how the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Pac-12 shakes out, and even the ACC with Clemson too. I mean, the win that they had on Saturday as well. So, but I think if you're a one-loss conference team, you probably have a decent shot at getting into the playoff.
So an undefeated season also, you can't rule that out as well. So I
Yeah.
want to talk about Mike Gundy as well, though, too, because again, this is a team that has never made the college football playoff. And again, there's a lot of teams that have never made the CFP, of course, but only being 4 teams and being pretty much dominated by 3 schools at this point: Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and obviously you can throw Clemson in there as well. So those 4 teams have basically been the teams that have mostly run the CFP. So it would bring a fresh face to the CFP. But for Mike Gundy, I mean, is there an expectation that he has to take this team, maybe even this year, to the playoff, or at least down the line? Because he's been the coach there for a long time. He's probably going to go down into the Hall of Fame one day at the school, but that's the only thing that seems like it's eluding him right now, is a playoff appearance. I mean, does he need that this year or within the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think expectations right now are what fans are wanting is just a conference title. They haven't had that since 2011. So, I think, if they can just worry about winning the conference title, not worrying about what comes after that, I think that's kind of where their mind's at right now. But I mean, like you talked about, Gundy's been there since 2005. He's accomplished a lot, but they only have that one conference title or conference championship. So I think fans are kind of wanting some more, and I think as they keep winning and move on with the season, expectations are only going to get higher.
Well, he's Oklahoma State's favorite son for sure. So I'm not going to put him on the hot seat or saying that this
Yeah.
could be the end of his tenure. Of course, over 15 years into it. But I mean, is there a point where if Gundy, let's just say, can't win the Big 12 this year, is there a point where the administration, him coming together and say, you know what, we can't do this for much longer because we keep coming up short? Or is he just going to be like, you know what, I'll step away when I'm good and ready?
No, I don't. I think the relationship that he has with the administration now is the best that he's ever had. A couple years ago, I think before last season, they got a new AD and a new president that and he's talked about it multiple times. Just the relationship that they have, the communication that they have is better than he's ever had. And honestly, I think this is probably the happiest he's been since he's been here. And obviously it's been 16, 17 years now. So I don't think he's never going to get fired. It'll take 3 seasons of losing record for that to happen, maybe, and even at that rate, he'll probably just step down and realize he just doesn't have it anymore. But I was thinking about this the other day when they beat Baylor, that you know this might be one of the better stretches that he's had in his career. You think about the season they had last year. You think about the start that they've got this year. If they can get back to the Big 12 title game and back-to-back seasons, I think this might show that Gundy's still got plenty left in the tank and isn't going to be going anywhere for a while.
Would you say this is Mike Gundy's best Oklahoma State team in his tenure?
Um, Not yet. I think last year's was still one of the best ones. Just the defense that they had. This year's offense is a lot more improved. They're able to go more up tempo. With the health that they have on the offensive line and the receivers that they've got. That might actually balance out, kind of the step back that they've taken on defense. And I think as the season goes on, that defense will continue to improve. And they might be able to push for beating out last year's teams as one of the better ones he's had in his career.
Cody Nagel of GoPokes.com, our Oklahoma Site 24/7 site. One more for you, Cody. I just wanted to get your expectation where you project this team to go, let's just say over the next couple of weeks, and how you see them finishing at this point here in 2022.
Yeah, I think probably 9-3 regular season. I just really worry about how the Big 12 is going to shake out. I think every week is a grind, but I think 9-3, 10-2 is probably the most likely scenario for regular season.
So we'll see where that leads him, possibly to another Big 12 title game, maybe a win this year for Mike Gundy and crew. Cody Nagel with me on the College Football Daily. Cody, where can everybody find you and your work on social media and online?
Yeah, you can follow me at Cody Nagel 247 on Twitter, and obviously GoPokes247.com for all the Oklahoma State coverage.
Best Oklahoma State coverage you can find on the internet for sure. Cody Nagel with me on the College Football Daily. Cody, thanks, man. Appreciate the time as always.
Thanks, Nick.
And that was Cody Nagel on the College Football Daily. I am Nick Kosko, your host once again on this Monday, October 3rd. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this video on YouTube. And of course, wherever you may get your podcasts, if you're listening on your device or computer as well, Apple, Spotify, wherever the case may be. Once again, I am Nick Kosko. Follow me on Twitter as well, at Nick Kosko59 on Twitter, and be sure to give our social media channels on 24/7 Sports a like and share and follow wherever you might find them on social media. That's going to do it for us. This has been the College Football Daily right here on 24/7 Sports.